public, and they are all campus. We have a lot of departments to thank for helping us put this together. In particular, I want to help all support throughout this process, and also MIT Video doing this. And I also want to shout out Providence Crime Syndication for running
two more. The chill. The MIT Mystery is able to happen to literally dollars worth of volunteer labor. Like that theme that you heard right at the beginning, which played throughout kickoff in various forms. We also had sub-themes for different characters. So Carter's sub-theme was the Hush Little Baby motif mixed with Livy and Rose, and Gladys's was the same thing in a minor key. We wanted to create this sort of true noir story, and I think we really took a lot of design elements and story elements from like Maltese, and we really wanted to lean into the genre's elements. We had this belief that we wanted to create the story with a lot of different endings, achievable sort of sub-endings. The biggest being that plot twist at the end of the Missing Diamond round, where you learned that who the thief was, you went to track him down, and he was dead. They did our boy's sidecar real dirty. After that, you did all of the late rounds and learned more about folks' secrets. Every single round delivered story throughout the round, sometimes to the extent of being red herrings for a couple of people, but every time you solved a puzzle, you got some story element, and sometimes that was also puzzle content. We really, really tightly wrapped those together, and then at the end of those rounds, you would confront those folks about their secrets. This was just a quick layout of our structure. We believe the total count of true puzzles and metas is 165. Of those, 42 are what we call stakeout puzzles. The stakeout, so when you worked in the Missing Diamond round, each time you solved one of the 4 sub-metas, you learned something about how one of the family members had a secret. You opened a new type of investigation that you could chase down that secret. In particular, the boardwalk unlocked the stakeout as a tiny little joke of ours because those were fish puzzles. That's right. Each of them was a totally different type of investigation. Obviously, the stakeout presented as a bunch of photos trying to figure out Katrina's story. The illegal search was our sort of love story to Generation 1 escape rooms. The background check, if you haven't worked on those metas, if you have worked on those metas, you could talk to Grant. And then the paper trail was an idea that had been kicking around for years. The paper trail was an idea that had been kicking around for years. Also sort of Grant's fault, because years ago he told me he wanted a round that could not be represented as a DAG because he thought it would mess with people's hunt management software. So we delivered. And so then after you finished the Missing Diamond and did the thief, you also got the murder in Metropolis. Just showing you this graph probably is a very different view of how you guys took it on this weekend. One of the original conversations we had when we were designing this was about sort of open world games as a way of letting teams of different sizes achieve different goals. A lot of teams only get through that sort of first round. We totally understand that. And so early on there was this talk of what if we let teams get through sort of like, think about a Zelda, like you do the intro world and then you can do all the side quests, or maybe you just go and fight Ganon. That it didn't really work out that way necessarily. I know for a lot of you probably that was just another investigation to go through, but that was sort of our central through line that we considered. My expectation going into this weekend, which proved to be entirely false, was that for every team, the murder would be the last one they solved. That just didn't work that way. Everyone took a totally different approach, and that was great. And then after you did all of these investigations, each of them gave you a different ending, but once you got all of them, you got sort of our true ending, which was the end game, and I think we've got some videos of Cardinality doing that later. Yeah, good luck, guys. You were not our worst. We did a few things different. A few big different things this year. Some big ambitious swings, none of which I think were total misses, so that's huge. The first of those was really returning to an in-person focus. And don't get me wrong, I love online puzzle hunts. One of the silver linings of the pandemic has been this huge rise in a multitude of like really great recurring online puzzle hunts and an ability for newer teams to run those hunts. But the in-person nature of the MIT Mystery Hunt is what makes it unique. And we felt it was really important to lean into that. So we decided that early on we would make this as much of an in-person experience as we could manage, and do things that just aren't possible when that's not available to you. We made some decisions that focused on that. There were some situations that also helped remote teams, so people picked up at some point that when you solved a partial answer that only had a task at the gala remaining, because we knew some folks would do that in the middle of the night when they couldn't come to the gala, you did get a key back automatically from the partial. If there was any puzzle content remaining, you didn't get a key back because you haven't solved the puzzle. All right, another big swing was the gala and having an open HQ. There were a lot of folks who sort of contributed concepts to this. When I think Grant and Carolyn first proposed this theme, they proposed that we sort of frame it in a party. I think it was originally called Mergers and Mayhem. We said, oh, a party, that's really interesting, and started talking about things that we loved from last year. And two things that struck us were, one, that TTBNL was really pretty gracious about like letting people visit their HQ without scheduling on the drop of a hat. And then the other was that we kept running into other puzzlers in the Marriott lobby, and it was awesome. And so we said, what if we turn the gala into that? And so we opened up our HQ. We did have a back room that was our second HQ, but all weekend, many of our team members were just hanging out there, looking to meet with you, giving you excuses to meet with us, doing those interactions in person, and we built out from that. We also turned it into a giant immersive theater thing. And again, that's because that's what we are, that's what we're passionate about. What I will say, lessons learned from this, the immersive theater aspect of that was a lot to staff. We had a ton of fun with it. I hope other folks find their balance. You may not want to build out something as big as the gala, but for future running teams, having an open HQ where people can come and visit you is the greatest thing ever. Next huge thing that we focused on was a really big focus on the story. This was just tied into the theme as proposed. That was what we voted on, was to take that approach. As Grant has carefully written out for me here, storytelling and mystery hunt is hard. It's really hard. It's really, really hard. There's a lot of reasons for that. People coming in and out, people having the whole long weekend to try to remember things. It's very easy to ignore the story content when you've got 5 hours of single puzzle in between, and it's easy to conflate that story content with puzzle content. And then finally, like most teams, put all the puzzles in their hunt management software and then never look at the hunt website. So it is really, really, really hard. So we really wanted to have a focus on that. There were a few parts to that we wanted. One was to make it really easy to catch up on the story. And the hub page was the biggest way to do that. Instead of having a story so far that was written, we just had this page constantly updating with information about what you needed to know and what questions you had answered. So if someone did show up in the middle of the hunt, they could just look at that and say, I see what's going on now. We also tried to catch you up frequently with the radio, and we'll talk more about the radio soon, but we had the Metropolis Confidential segments every few hours, trying to keep people caught up on things that they'd missed, and of course the live updates that happened as soon as you sent an away team to do a confrontation, and we marked that confrontation as complete. You got a Metropolis Confidential breaking update to say, hey, we just learned that Gladys is selling counterfeits. We wanted to deliver it continuously throughout, even to people who aren't looking for it. We wanted to really ingrain it in our puzzle content. I mean, those of you who solve the murder meta understand just how deeply we ingrained it in our puzzle content. But every one of our rounds was, we went from the story we wanted to tell first to the round structure. And so Grant gave us a list and said, can you make a round that would fit as an illegal search? Can you make a list that would be a paper trail? And we went and did that. Yeah, that's the story focus. I think we're very proud of that. Another big thing we did was called Stray Leads. We learned this from the 2022 and 2024 hunts because they released the scavenger hunts sort of early to teams so that you could work on them outside of regular timing. We learned in 2018 that when people unlock the scavenger hunt in the middle of the night, they're very upset with you. And so the idea here was that we could release something before the round that it belonged to. This ended up being an absolute godsend for us for a lot of different reasons. The other thing that it did for us was that when we created cool things, and we'll show you some of those cool things soon, but things like Control Room and Incommunicado tonight, teams didn't have to just get there organically. It wasn't just for the 10 teams that managed to make it late in the hunt. We were able to schedule those back to back to back starting at 3 p.m. Friday so that every single team could do them. The Stray Leads also let us do some cool things like for teams that reached out to us and said, hey, we're not seeming to get that far, but we really just want to do text adventures. We could just unlock the text adventures for them. And it also let us put in things like scavenger hunts, which, by the way, you guys got to do the radio recitals, which were 2 of our sort of scavenger hunt activity type things. We also wrote 2 more scavenger hunts. We did not mean to be the team that kills the scavenger hunt. We thought they were really good, but we were so stretched running everything else that we just never launched them. So those will be live in the solution site, along with our 3 cutting room floor puzzles. We wrote 3 extra floater puzzles that didn't get used because none of our other shit broke. And then the last. I hope Dan has a lot of things to say about this. Was the decision to use Choose Your Own Adventure. You know what? Speaking of Dan, by the way, if you guys didn't look super closely at the credit slide, his name is up there. This was really came about in part because of that conversation about a structure that could be more open world style, letting people go towards one ending if they wanted to. It came about in part because a lot of folks seem to really like the idea of strategizing around how you navigate the hunt, and so we wanted to give some opportunities for that. It also felt really thematically motivated, sort of going around a lot of different leads. A noir story is inherently very confusing, a lot of things happening simultaneously, and so we decided to go down that approach. We wrote a white paper at some point during the year, a 9-page white paper entitled Choose Your Own Adventure and Why We're Fool Enough to Try It Again. We gave you keys for unlocks to help keep what was even beam with, clues to be converted to more keys or used as free answers as another sort of thing you could strategize on. This was designed to help a lot of different styles of teams. We've heard from small teams who hate being overwhelmed by free unlocks, or as Sarah described it, like at some point the pity unlocks just made me start to cry. So we wanted people to have that choice. If you needed greater beam width, you could use that. If you just preferred to use them as free answers, you could. And then we didn't want to have this sort of structural advantage where the better teams just got more and more beam width. So all of those were released on a basically a time basis via events or the things released in stray leads. And then finally, again, why we're fool enough to try it again, we wanted to make sure it was an informed choice. One of the biggest pitfalls of choose your own adventure or getting to make these choices is that if you feel like you've made the wrong choice after the fact, like there's no agency there. It's like I picked one of the other. So we wanted to make it as informed as we could by giving you the titles and as non-spoilery a summary as we could. Obviously, sometimes there was still a surprise in there when you unlocked the one that said it was about chessboards and it was actually fucking math. And then by doing it on an individual level instead of a round level, each choice was sort of a smaller choice, so there was no, if you felt like you'd made the wrong choice, it wasn't this huge, like this is going to screw us for the rest of the game. Lots and lots of opportunities for strategy there. Next, I'm going to talk about radios. Yeah. Our tech team is stellar, and they are stellar enough that we could have several of them devote their lives full-time to making radios this year and have a hunt website that just fucking worked. And for those of you who got to interact with us at the gala and see things like when you rate limited yourself, you could come visit me and I could just break the rate limiter. We also had an amazing number of operational tools. But early in the year, some folks proposed to us, like, what if we also gave them a radio as a sort of in-universe, genre, period-appropriate way of connecting to the teams, being in their HQs as well as inviting them to our HQs and connecting them to the story. And there was this conversation about like, well, that's really expensive. Let's not do that. And someone said, actually, I think I've priced this out and we might be able to do this for like $30. And then we said like, okay, but you can only justify it if you can write a couple of puzzles that will use the radio. And then, yeah, driving from Dallas to Houston after the NPL Con, we came up this ridiculous music device. We put a bunch of different content in it. We used it to connect with you. We used it to connect you to the story. We used it to get you running around campus. And then the entirely unreasonable flex of also making it a working FM radio, which it turns out in 2025 is still much harder than you'd expect. Here's a bunch of stuff. This is a bunch of stuff that our tech team wanted me to show you. I have no idea what it is. I think I know what the battery charger is. That's the one that makes the magic smoke. They did specifically want me to mention that the board was designed for expandability, so we would love to hear now, if you take it apart, and find other fun things to do with it. We will be releasing plans and firmware at some point after they get a bunch of sleep. If you do want to start asking a bunch of questions about the radio, Evan and Steve and Sarah and Arcturus can answer those. Just come find them after. there was a lot going on. In addition to the primary board, the radio had dozens of other parts. Once again, this was in July when we came to the radio team and said, hey, we also want a magnet sensor. Can we have that in a different place than a light sensor that we also want to add? Also, can you reinforce it so we can have people bang on it? There's supposed to be a video excerpt, which is not showing, of the approximately 30 total assembly steps. Oh, maybe I can get that to play. Oh, it did play. Oh, never mind then. Great. Yeah, there was a 30-page manual on how to assemble them. There were many, many work parties. I don't necessarily recommend spinning up a small-scale consumer electronics startup. And definitely don't do it while writing a mystery hunt. One thing that people did ask us about was how the fun around worked. These were Bluetooth beacons placed around the campus. We planted low-energy Bluetooth beacons, just very low energy. We planted them around the campus 2 or 3 weeks ago, extremely well hidden. And the ones that we couldn't hide were actually in the paw prints. That's why we 3D printed those. So that was what happened each time you approached one of those beacons. It triggered a new audio, and they thought through so many different details. Things like when you triggered the ability to go on that runaround, it would automatically download all of the audio scripts and the protocol for that, because we knew that the Wi-Fi would be shoddy from that point forward. But we did have enough radio telemetry to check in occasionally and be like, okay, so-and-so is finished. Okay, so-and-so team is on Beacon 11. At some point in time, I'd love to create the sort of Marauders map, because we were able to track you around campus anytime your radio checked in. We are, however, a lot of teams, when they unlock songs on the radio, attempted to sing at it. That was discussed. We decided we did not want to be creepy enough to put a microphone in it. So we don't have microphones or GPS. Finally, for those of you who struggled with songs on the radio, you should know that I helped write and edit this puzzle. I knew exactly how it was supposed to work. Hopefully this video makes you feel a little better. Are the first 4 notes the same? So I'm apparently tone deaf. We got through that. We struggled our way through that eventually. So that's the radio. Like I said, at some point, someone's going to have to give an entire TED Talk on that alone. Evan will give his TED Talk on that. I will give my TED Talk on Choose Your Own Adventure, and then we'll see who's more popular. Next, I'm going to talk about events very briefly. Obviously, the events were your primary way of getting clues or expanded keys. We had 4 of them over the weekend. They were great. The first of them, I know, turned out a little bit harder than we intended. We tested it internally as a team back in October. We did expand the count a little bit because there were more of you. It also turns out it's a lot easier when you're all on the same team and know and like each other. So that first event turned out a little harder than intended, but I think it was really still cool, and it was the most puzzly of them. That was the making contact with an informant, linking chains of words or in phrases together. Each of them was a subtle reference to a NATO letter. The second event was tailing a lead, which was just our excuse to get you walking around looking silly. The third event was navigating high society, our sort of bulls and cows games with drinks. And then finally, what was the name of the fourth one? I forget what we named it. Seeing the big picture, that's right. Assembling stories of crime scenes. And then we really wanted that one in particular to be a team effort. And we'd hoped, and it turned out to be the case, that with navigating high society, it really worked out to be a team effort as well. Again, one of the most magical things about Mystery Hunt to us is interacting with other teams, interacting with other people, meeting new people. So we try to achieve that through the events. Now we get to some of the really fun stuff. A lot of puzzles asked you to submit things to us. In particular, the copy pasta puzzle, which was another. Yeah. I should say we kept a running joke, a tally on a board at one point, a number of different ways we'd screwed ourselves this weekend by messing with norms, by inviting people to come talk to us at the gala, and then by telling all of our team members that they couldn't talk about anything. And when people came in and said, "How's the weather?" they couldn't talk about that either. Started listing out which sports were fair game. The copy pasta was another one of these, in particular, because we asked you to send us wild copy pastas, and a lot of teams did, including literally Animal Farm, which we decided we just could not display here. You nasty, nasty dogs. We also discovered in test solving that if you didn't quite know what was going on and you were missing a letter, you could really accidentally get the phrase "send nudes." So we put in we had a policy in general of not confirming wrong answers, so our partial answer checker didn't tell you, "Oh, you're close, but." In this particular case, we did want to tell you, "No, no, 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 no." For the puzzle, he shouldn't have eaten the apple, which was about Adam ruins everything. We asked you to ruin things for us, which a lot of folks sent us different ruinings. This one was also great because Adam Conover agreed to do sort of a stunt for us and recorded the answer. So if you did ruin something for us, this was part of the reason we asked you to format your submissions so carefully, was because they went into a particular queue, and when we marked that ticket close, it automatically triggered giving you his audio, which did go out over the radio if you were listening. And so he read out the answer for you. We did get another ruining that probably should have happened a year ago. So thank you, Left Out. For the puzzle, it's all cheap and a sheep to me, which sounds like a very constrained title because it is. We ended up coming up with some pretty wild titles. None of them quite as good as in our test solving the title "Canada Should Secede" for a fake puzzle that never ended up existing. But it's all cheap and a sheep. Asked you to make a video about animal noises in another language. So thank you, Rage, for that one. A lot of them were really, really good. Maybe at some point we'll be able to fully scrape. We also got a lot of recorded statements for, I only know its code name. What's the real name of Infatuated Copper? Tunnels beneath the Institute, yes. We got a lot of recorded statements for that. Some of them were also really, really good, but this is not an audio medium. Next I'm going to talk about some of our various installation activity puzzles that many of you got to see over the course of the weekend. In a general sense, some of those were our bar interactions. We really leaned into those bar interactions as part of physical and in-person puzzles.
These guys. I'm sorry. You're sorry for what? Breaking the bar, breaking the bar, and
making a mess.
making the mess. Please forgive us. Thank you.
In a sumo competition, stretched out and exercise. You ready for this feat? Yes. Let's go. You're familiar with the rules of sumo, right? Just remind me, just in case.
So thank you to the team for writing all of those. Obviously, we asked early in the year, come up with ideas that can let people come interact with us, either to just do an interaction or to do more puzzle after that. And a lot of those were, you do half a puzzle and then you come interact with us and then you get more of a physical puzzle. And thanks to our bartenders for really stepping it up there. And thank you all for really playing along. At one point during the weekend, we had to take our ticketing queue down for 5 or 10 minutes in order to do an upgrade. And we informed our bartenders that they just, would need to stall for that period of time. And so they did, and at some point I looked over and somebody was teaching a whole group of puzzlers how to do the Charleston, and they were all doing it. So thank you guys for that. The next installation activity puzzle that's worth talking about is the Fermit Challenge. This was our estimation pub quiz game, which was initially designed to be slotted way in sort of a late round, as we'll come visit teams' HQs and we'll run it in your HQ. And then we tested it with our team and everybody was like, this is too fun. We have to make sure every team sees this. And so then it became a pub quiz game running on the hour that a lot of people came and enjoyed. A little bit of, as we referred to it, mind and hand waving. The Fermit Challenge asked you to estimate things, and based on how you performed, your team got data back, which were fuzzed images that were more fuzzed the worse you did. Questions like, by the time this quiz ends, how many answer submissions will all teams have submitted for this mystery hunt? Yes, I then had to increasingly... going back to the concept earlier of ways we screwed ourselves, people were asking about, what topics can we talk about? Can we talk about how many people are registered for Hunt? No. What if people ask where the bathroom is? Where? Yes. How many? No. Another check mark on the board. The Fermit Challenge was a lot of fun. We're going to talk about next the Infinite Scavenger Hunt. Thank you, Kevin. I cannot tell you how pleased he was with himself when he informed me that the page said Infinite Scavenger Hunt and the I was capitalized. So you had approximately one infinite amount of time to complete the scavenger hunt, and we've got some videos of people doing so.
Yeah, socks, shoes, you have it.
Good.
When people learned that an infinite amount of time had collapsed, we got a whole lot of groans, so that was a huge success. Next, I'm going to talk about incommunicado tonight. Yes. Steve built these incredible things, and then we informed him that in order to get everybody through it, he would have to build a second one, and so he did. And then it just sort of, again, us screwing ourselves, built upon itself where Steve was like, I want to do this game, and I want to have them, because it's a switchboard game, I want them to go to the bar first and not be able to make a call. So could we do a little fake phone thing? And then Sarah was like, yeah, I'll totally build this up. Do you want me to wire it up such that they can actually get the answer delivered through the phone? Yeah, great. Okay, let's do that. And then I said, like, okay, well, if we're going to have that, I really want to make a bunch of Moe's Taverns jokes, so can you make it so that the phone rings? And they said, yeah, sure, why not? And then our bartenders turned that into an entire experience for everybody. But you were asked to make a call. You went, you learned the phone lines were down. You had to come play a game. Once you succeeded enough at the game in order to get a final clue, you were able to come back and make the final phone call. Again, we wanted to create this sort of whole immersive experience. I think we've got a pretty good video of that one, too.
Gamers 2491.
I also do want to give an apology to Rage, who were down the hall from this game. Sorry. And then I think this is our final one, Control Room. Yeah, yeet the body! This obviously, it was in many ways a spiritual successor to Under Control from 2018. And it was largely made by our team members who work for Boxeroo. So they came to us early in the year and they said, we want there to be an escape room and mystery hunt. And we were like, that's great, without realizing that throughout the year there would be all these conversations. So-and-so is working on the escape room puzzle. Oh, you mean the meta? No, the unhinged one. We did 2 escape rooms in our mystery hunt. So here's some video from that. I hope Dan Cass is watching. Hit the body! So thank you again to the folks who made that. Thank you for all of you with engaging with that. I will also say once again, when they told us that they wanted to do this, we said, okay, but now you have to make 2, and they did. And they had to build out their own entire separate room, so you could, in fact, plug a fork into the electrical outlet. So they did. So that was the control room. And then, maybe this is the final one. Like I said, when you finally got to the end game, you got to the vault. You had to open the vault, which you were informed was locked based on sound. There was a high-tech sound-based lock that Sidecar had installed, and no one else knew how to unlock it. But good thing Sidecar had left all of these objects lying around the room. That's right. Oh, that might be somebody else, actually. Yeah, sorry, that one was in cardinality. You can tell because they actually did a good job. This one might be, now my videos are mixed up, so we'll see who it is. So that was the end game. It did require you to use each of the items that you had gotten from each of the interactions. So at each of the confrontations, you would have confronted one of the family members or one of the suspects and said, hey, I know your secret. And then they basically bribed you to keep it a secret with a whistle or a deck of cards or whatever else. And so when a dot appeared on the screen, that was like a critically important element that you had to get right in the Foley game using one of those objects, where one of the objects, of course, was playing music on the radio. Cardinale wasn't great at that. Great, now I get to run into stats, everyone's favorite thing. These are our official stats as of 10 p.m. when HQ closed. Just kidding, we don't want to deny any of you your accomplishments. Here are the updated stats as of this morning. A lot of teams, and we're really grateful for that. A lot of mystery hunters. Thank you all for coming again. Almost 200 teams solved at least one puzzle. Almost 100 solved a meta. We got many teams through the thief and the crime scene interaction, which we were really proud of, just running them one by one last night. At some point yesterday, we were running one instance of the vault and 2 instances of the crime scene and like a separate speakeasy to do the other confrontations. So our cast and our stage management team and all of the other folks who were running that, it was quite the show. And then, of course, 34 teams managed to finish at least one of the late round super metas. As of 10 p.m. last night, it was a nail biter. 7 teams had finished all of their metas, had finished the hunt. Cardinality first, Providence a little ways after. From that point forward, we were really aggressively trying to hint people and help them. So we don't have a particularly ordered list from there, but there were 7 teams that had finished by 10 p.m., including, was it 13 seconds before TSBI called in their last answer? I think someone asked on one of the Discords, like, does that count? We didn't do the interaction. Yes, you finished the hunt. You did call them. Excellent. And then by this morning, several more teams had finished the hunt, which is really fantastic. We gave a whole lot of hints, as you'll notice. Once again, having the Open HQ was just so much fun. People came to visit us. People who really wanted extra help just came and camped out and just worked there, and it was great. By Sunday afternoon, the gala was just so much fun, just packed with people. We gave about 3,000 hints through the website. We opened hinting for some of the earliest puzzles in the hunt Friday afternoon, and then Saturday morning we opened basically the entire first round for hinting. The reason we didn't open many of the later rounds was until much later was in part because people were approaching them at different times, but also in part because our hint queue was just full. And we still managed a median response time of about 7 minutes, which we're pretty happy with, including during the overnight where our skeleton crew was, I think, 3 people. So well done, guys. Our most solved puzzle was XOXO. That was flipping with shrinkage for a long time, but we, settled that as of 10 p.m. Our shortest solved time for engagements in other crimes. A lot of people speculated early on whether the invite was a puzzle. Yes, it was. We were really thrilled to be able to have a sort of stunt puzzle that we could send out ahead of the hunt, and we were really thrilled to see if anyone solved it ahead of the hunt. We didn't put out an answer checker in advance, so we had no way of knowing if anyone had done it until these guys called it in 4 seconds. The shortest solve time that we know of that is probably not a back solve was Frumius getting the under blacklight center is in plain sight in 2 minutes and 21. Do we have a stat on the center is in plain sight step 1? Okay, yeah, so the fastest solve on the main center is in plain sight was 16 minutes. Somebody did manage to cheese the puzzle, whose answer was cheese. Where's Octember? Is he around? Yeah, if you want to talk to the author of that monstrosity, and we're really, really grateful. He proposed this ridiculous idea of a puzzle that you could skip if you did figure it out, and then we went to him and said, what if we did it to them twice? So our trolliest puzzles all ended up in the illegal search because we wanted to do it twice. The longest solve on the center is in plain sight, at least the last time I checked, was like 8 hours. So we're really, really sorry. The longest solve on anything was Team Unknown getting press play. The team that bought the most answers was literally Animal Farm. At some point, we became fairly generous for anyone who asked to have extra keys or clues to buy answers, and some people asked. The most frequent wrong answers were just Flamingo on Check It Ease Words Out, and Gosling and Ryan Gosling. People figured out forename Ryan, did not figure out the last step. Other common wrong answers. Our favorite attempted erratum, we got a lot of requests like, we think you got this puzzle about brass rats wrong. You were getting move bezels up TGR. Did you guys fuck something up? No, we did not. You just haven't graduated yet. And then, of course, race sidecar was a very popular one because we had you read that answer backwards. For anyone who didn't pick up on it, we had I don't remember the exact wording we used, but the last clue that you got when you did that runaround asked you to go back and look look back on your steps specifically. At some point during the year, we were going through fact-checking things, making sure we were very consistent on our policies, and someone said, hey, we have a policy of not responding to wrong answers. I see you have the answer penis in here. And the EIC said, no, we should keep that one. One of the EICs also wrote that puzzle, so it's his fault. Most number of team name changes was small llama malls. We did have a team. I don't know who it was, but somebody did show up at the gala at one point, and we asked, like, okay, whose tab is this on? And they said, we are Big Honkin' Tom. And we said, I don't believe you. Once again, in the theme of how we trolled ourselves, we decided to run this big event with a consumer electronic product with massive amounts of interaction where people could ask us any sort of questions and would come to us constantly asking for things. And then we gave them the ability to change their names, so we had no idea who anybody was. Which is why we actually closed registration 2 days before the hunt started so we could lock everybody's names. And part of the reason we removed having a public list of team names. Here is the big graph. This is, yeah. I will let you all look at that for a minute. Obviously, we will come up with a much more sophisticated version of this at some point when we go into archival mode. The x-axis is probably time. I don't know. It's time. Great. Oh. We'll get you some more detailed versions of this later, but we thought you might want to see this now. Obviously, there are a whole lot of teams, so it's hard to break down in much detail. We're almost done. I wanted to do a couple more things. One, Cardinelli, if you're willing to just stand and face the crowd and wave for a minute, I wanted to give you guys a big congrats. As always, congratulations. Good luck. Don't do what we did. We wanted to show off our coin. This is the coin that Cardinality found. The way the endgame played out for them was a sort of Maltese Falcon-esque joke where they discovered the true criminal behind all of this, the true protagonist of our story, who the lullaby is written about, Baby, who locked them in the vault, but gave Billy the coin that Papa had stolen in the mystery heist. When Providence reached out to us in the fall, and we had told them we would love for them to do a thing, we just gave them some story for the mystery heist. They didn't get any details that anyone else didn't get. We just gave them this story and a list of characters, and they went and ran with it. And they reached out and they said, like, is it okay if we have them steal a coin? And we were like, yeah, okay, we'll work with that. So Billy was given the coin that Papa had stolen during the heist, and flaunted it in front of the team and said, but you can't have this, I need this as evidence. You can instead have one of Gladys's counterfeits, which has a hole in it, both because it is missing a diamond and because it can be worn as a pendant. So that's all the major stuff. I'm going to, let's see, we're going to have a whole bunch of things happen here in a second. We are doing sales of t-shirts and postcards for anyone who wants them. We also have a corner of stuff that's free if you want it, some leftover physical puzzles, some t-shirts from previous years that are still left over. That's all going to run over here. It is cash only. We're not doing an online web store because we do not want to run another business. We're going to play you out with our own personal jazz rendition of Closing Time, which was made for our bar. I also want to give, yeah, good. All right, we got the plane is taking off. Give a huge congrats to our tech team because solutions are live now. The answer checker still works for any of you who are still continuing, but there's now a link to the solution on every page, and anyone who wants to just go in and check solutions generally, there's a public access user that you can get to. There will be an archival mode soon to come so that we can have versions, all of them. We have some archival plans such that every puzzle can be fully remotely solvable. That is soon TM, as soon as we get just a little bit of rest. So that's it. Thank you all for coming.